Hello and welcome to the Astrology Forecast. My name is Sage, here as your eye into the sky, letting you know what the cosmic events are for the week, why they matter, and how you can use this information in your everyday life. I hope everybody enjoyed a beautiful week last week. Thank you all so much for your patience. I did take some time away from social media, from YouTube, from all the things, and I was present with family. I was also a bit under the weather, which wasn't super fun, but we made it through. We are officially pretty much out of Taurus season at this point. So last week was our final week of Taurus season. Shout out to everybody that I did Taurus solar return chart readings for this past month. Geminis, it is your time. So if you're listening to this, if you're a Gemini, or maybe you know and love a Gemini, this is the time for Geminis. 50% off of solar return readings, 30% off of birth chart readings. And of course, I would love to chat with you all as it is your month. It is your birthday month. There's a lot to be celebrating. We also have a lot of planets entering Gemini this week, and this is going to last for the duration of the next few weeks. So make sure that you look at where you have a Gemini in your birth chart. Even if you do not have any planets in Gemini, you don't have to be born during Gemini season, you will still have Gemini occupying a particular area of your chart, which does correspond to a particular area of your life. I really recommend looking at where this is. For the last month or so, we've had a lot of planets in Taurus, and it was really important to note what this was activating in your chart. But now, as we move out of Taurus energy and into Gemini energy, it is equally important to note where this is showing up in your chart so you can also be really aware moving forward as to how this energy is going to show up in your personal life. So, without further ado, we have a very big week ahead. Make sure you stay tuned till the end. We have a full moon this week. We have one of the luckiest days of 2024, and we have one of the biggest planetary shifts occurring that's going to last for over a year. So really take note of what is happening this week, as it is one of those pivot points of the year. So without further ado, let's dive into all of the cosmic events happening this week. So starting off this week on Monday, May 20th, the sun enters Gemini. So this is officially the beginning of Gemini season. Again, happy birthday to all the Geminis listening right now. Now, this is the first planet to enter into Gemini, but it is not the last. We have a lot of planets entering Gemini this week, so be ready. I'm going to be discussing a lot about Gemini energy. I'm going to start with the sun because, of course, the sun entering Gemini is one of the most important things, but it's not the only one. So, by going through the sun in Gemini, we will get a very good understanding of the energy of Gemini, which is really the goal for this segment of the forecast. Because as we go through the rest, I want us all to be very understood on what Gemini energy means, what it represents, and maybe again, even noting where it happens to be in your chart so you can even make this more personalized for you. And of course, if you're not sure, you can always message me. I'm happy to let you know where this is showing up in your chart. All right, so Gemini is a mutable air sign, okay? It is ruled by Mercury and it is represented by the twins. Now, air signs are all about intellect, okay? Air signs are all about the mouth and the mind, especially Gemini being mutable air. Mutable just simply means changeable. It means flexible and adaptable, as Gemini season happens at the very end of the spring as we're starting to transition into that summertime. Now, the thing with Gemini energy is that it is very, very different from Taurus energy. We just came out of the sun being in Taurus, this very rooted, fixed, grounded energy that really does serve as the hallmark of spring. When we think of springtime, we think of things coming to life, of things blooming. And that is really that Taurus energy, that fixed earth that really allows us to get grounded, to get rooted, and then also to simultaneously grow and bloom. Now, Gemini is a little bit different. Gemini is kind of like the busy bee of, our zodiac, so to speak. When we think of Gemini, I think of like a butterfly, and it, basically flies around to all the different flowers and pollinates each and every single one. Because there's a social quality here, being that it's an air sign, it kind of changes the more mundane, routine energy that Taurus season brought us, and it picks up the pace a little bit. So when we get to Gemini season, things get a lot more exciting. I was actually listening to Shane reading of this book last night as we were cooking dinner, and I'm going to read what it said because I think it's a really good way to understand the flow of energy from Aries to Taurus and then finally to Gemini. It's really quick, and it says that Aries essentially pioneers the land. Taurus cultivates the land, and Gemini explores the neighboring regions, and it finds various roads and rivers and trade routes so that way the civilization that is living on the land has others that it can trade with, barter with, and essentially live amongst. And so this is really the beautiful way that Gemini energy functions in the zodiac. This is the sign that says, hey, it's not just about who we are and what we have, but it's also about what we know. This is when the mind gets introduced to the zodiac. And this is really why Gemini is a very quick witted, very mentally adept sign. In fact, if you have Gemini placements, you know that you probably think a lot faster than most people. And this can be something that's really a huge superpower for Geminis. Maybe also make you feel like nobody else can keep up as quickly as you, and that's okay, right? Surround yourself with some other Geminis, and you'll find that you can also have people matching your pace. Now, the thing with Gemini energy is that it is represented by the twins being Castor and Pollux, which are actually the two stars within the Gemini constellation. If you ever look up into the night sky, if it's dark enough to see the stars, and you're able to see Gemini, the constellation, you actually will see two very bright stars within this constellation. And those stars are named Castor and Pollux, which goes back to Greek mythology. These were two brothers that, of course, did become the sort of signification of Gemini, this idea of having two coming together as one. And that's really what Gemini represents. It's the idea of duality, right? Of polarities and of how we can take two things and bring them together. Now, it's not saying these two things are becoming one. It's simply just saying that we are bringing these two things together to work together in a sense of duality and harmony, right? Kind of similar to Libra, another air sign, but not as focused on the balancing of things, more so on the understanding of two things. I also read something else for Gemini that says that Gemini's function is really to determine what the ideas are that man runs his civilization off of. And so this is the idea sign. During Gemini season, your ideas are a lot more elevated. Your thinking is a lot quicker. You might feel more social. You might notice that you don't want to get bogged down in routine. During Taurus season, it maybe felt really good to establish some level of routine and consistency. And now that Gemini season is upon us, I want us to look again and really analyze, because that's a huge Gemini quality, analyze what things in your life could improve through maybe a little bit more change and versatility. Some qualities of Gemini, I actually wrote them down just so we can get an overall understanding of this archetype, of this energy of Gemini. Gemini is versatile. It's the multitasker of the zodiac. Gemini is curious, right? It's like that little kid that keeps asking why. That's really the embodiment of Gemini energy. It's young, it's curious, it's thoughtful in a lot of ways. Gemini is talkative. Oh my goodness. I am a teacher, as many of you know. I work with little kids, and I can almost at this point in my 7 years be able to pretty much accurately pick out when a student or a child has Gemini placements. And that's because this is typically the kid that will always be talking, chatting, asking questions. Not to say that other signs don't, but usually that term chatterbox gets associated with the Gemini archetype. Other qualities of Gemini: it's quick, it's witty, it's charming, it's a natural salesman. Gemini needs to be mentally stimulated. This is the sign that gets extremely restless and extremely bored. Do not do the same thing repetitively over and over and over again and expect a Gemini to feel fulfilled. Ultimately, Geminis need some level of spark, some level of not quite spontaneity, that's more of its sister sign, Sagittarius, but definitely some level of mental intrigue and adeptness. It needs to be able to kind of think on its feet. And last but not least, Gemini, the tool for Gemini is the rational mind. So I want you really to think about this as we move through with the rest of this week's forecast and with the rest of this month. how the energy of Gemini is showing up in your life. I want to take a special note, of course, to look at where it's showing up in your chart. This is because this area of your life is getting very much activated by this mental quality. You might find that whatever area of life this is, whether it be your children, your finances, your career, maybe your sense of self, maybe your home life, your family, your parents, whatever this is, you will more than likely be thinking more about this area of life, be talking more about this area of life. You might find that you're building more social connections with people regarding this area of your life. Maybe you're a parent, you need more parent friends, and suddenly this is entering your house of children. And now you're getting a lot more talkative, curious, and social when it comes to parenting. Just as a quick example, but understanding where this shows up can be crucial for really getting a really good understanding of this energy and how it is showing up in your life. So, with that, let's dive into the rest of the week as we have more than one planet entering into Gemini and a lot to look forward to. All right, so diving into Thursday, May 23rd, arguably the most significant day this week. We have a pile up of cosmic events happening this day, so listen up. On Thursday, the first major thing occurring is Venus and Jupiter are conjunct in Taurus. Now, these are the two most positive planets in our solar system. Venus and Jupiter are what's known as the benefics. Jupiter is the greater benefic, Venus is the lesser benefic. Jupiter rules over luck, expansion, philosophy, travel, and all things related to growth and development. Venus is the planet of value. It relates to everything involving our love, our finances, the things that we value, including art and beauty, anything that is aesthetically pleasing, and of course, relationships. Now, having these two planets coming together in Taurus is absolutely divine. This is like seriously probably the luckiest day of 2024 because having the two luckiest planets coming together just essentially expands our luck, which Jupiter is the planet of expansion. Anything that Jupiter touches, it expands. It is touching Venus, the planet of money, value, love, and relationships. So naturally, even these areas of life are expected to get a huge boost. Not only that, but Venus happens to rule over Taurus. It's in Taurus. So this is like the final hurrah for both Venus and for Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. And I say that because literally by the next day, both Venus and Venus and Jupiter are out of Taurus and are entering into Gemini. So we are taking a kind of a short detour from the Gemini energy here for just a second to look back at our Taurus house. Check out where this is. If you're a Taurus rising, oh my goodness, send this to your Taurus risings. This is the day for them. If you have Taurus in your big three, this is another day. Really, 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 really good. Now, understand that this is very short-lived. We will be feeling the energy of this in the days leading up to it. So pretty much all this week, we're going to start to feel this lucky, enhanced, beautiful, positive, optimistic energy taking place. It's just essentially really good stuff. Now, again, looking at where it shows up for you, you can look forward to that area of life getting a major boost of luck and miraculousness. It's only in effect inexact for about 12 hours. It goes exact at 4 a.m. on the 23rd. By 5:15 that afternoon, Venus is saying peace out to Taurus and is into Gemini. So it's really not that long that we're experiencing this energy for at its peak. However, if you have something going on that you need to plan for and you have the ability to put it in that time frame between 4 a.m. and 5 p.m. on the 23rd, I really recommend you do so, as I almost guarantee, I never guarantee, but I almost guarantee that you're going to experience a really, really, really positive outcome for whatever happens, especially if you go a level deeper and you know where in your life this is showing up and you can really align yourself to it. It can really take over and essentially create magic. So this is a really, really great day. This is the first major piece of this day. We're going to dive into the rest right now. So moving right along, still on Thursday, May 23rd, this is also the day of the full moon in Sagittarius. Now, we are in the midst of a beautiful lunar energy with this full moon. I'm really happy to say this, by the way, because I feel like for the last maybe 6 weeks or so, ever since all the craziness of, the eclipse season and all of that, it never really felt like any of these lunations, either new or full moons, were really activated for our betterment, right? A lot of them came with a lot of healing and working through different problems and having to face certain mirrors, and just it was very heavy energy. So I'm happy to report that this full moon in Sagittarius is the happy stroke of luck that all of us have been asking for, especially since I know the past few weeks, the past couple of lunations haven't felt this way. This full moon in Sagittarius is taking place at 2 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini, and this is a really, really, really great energy for expansion. It is, of course, being ruled by Jupiter because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and naturally, Jupiter is also doing some great things as we just discussed. So, what does this full moon really look like? Well, number one, we're looking at the Gemini Sagittarius axis. This, I always say, is the happiest axis in the entire zodiac. This is my personal opinion, but from what I've witnessed from all of my different client readings that I've done, I've noticed that a lot of times people that have Gemini Sagittarius, there's a happy-go-lucky quality to these two signs that's almost unmatched amongst the rest of the zodiac. So props to you if you have one of those in your big three. Now, Gemini is the sign of the lower mind, and I say that with love, not necessarily in a hierarchical way, but in a way that is more so focused on the rudimentary facts. A lot of us in the astrology world always say that Gemini is kind of like elementary school or K-12, while Sagittarius is essentially like college and beyond. And so you've got this basic, rudimentary, I need to know the facts, I need to know the details, I need to know the root and the foundation of whatever this idea is. This is Gemini energy. This is what the sun is going to be in. Opposite to this is going to be Sagittarius. The moon will be in Sagittarius on Thursday the 23rd, which means emotionally, our emotions are not only feeling fired up because it's in a fire sign, Sagittarius, but also Sagittarius is the sign of expansion. Sagittarius is the sign that takes the facts that basically Gemini collected and it expands them into theory. And so it's like collecting information for a paper and then actually writing the thesis, right? So in this case, the moon is in Sagittarius, meaning that we're taking all of the things that the sun is teaching us and we're applying meaning to them through how we feel about them. This is really, really great for expanding how one feels. This is awesome for exploring new ways of feeling, as Sagittarius and Gemini both are very open-minded, very open to new ideas and new ways of doing things and growth. And so really take advantage of this chance to essentially expand your emotional framework, to essentially look at what it is that makes you tick in a certain area of life, Gemini. Look at where you've got Gemini in your chart. Opposite to that is going to be Sagittarius. So these two houses in your chart getting activated tells us that while we need the information that the Gemini is giving us, we equally need the meaning that the moon is providing. And therefore, when we've got this full moon, expect miracles, expect strokes of genius, of thought, of breakthrough, of realization that maybe there's more than we realized, which is exactly what Sagittarius helps us to do opposite to Gemini. So this is a really, really, really great full moon. The only thing I will say about this full moon is that because we're dealing with such positive, optimistic energy, it can be so futuristic thinking that it kind of neglects the here and now. So there's a chance that we lose touch with that realism, especially the fact that Jupiter is still in Taurus during this full moon, but it will be entering Gemini in just a few days. We are getting to feel that energetic shift taking place. Now, again, this particular day, Jupiter is still in Taurus. So we are still getting a more earthy, grounded effect on the full moon, which is great because otherwise there is a chance here that things could become over idealized, that we could kind of get this overinflated sense of fantasy or of illusion. And while this can be great for dream building and futuristic thinking, sometimes it holds us back from actually taking action in the here and now. Emotionally, this could show up as us kind of missing red flags, maybe not really looking at the realistic, practical, logical side of things, and more so just focusing on the emotional experience that we're having. While that's amazing, and that's what Sagittarius energy encourages us to do, the Gemini energy that's still being activated by all these other planets might remind us of the facts behind whatever our emotions are kind of fantasizing. So just keeping that in mind, but otherwise, this is a really, really, really great energy. And the last point I want to make on this is while we are experiencing this full moon energy, it's important to also note that this is a culmination. This is a culmination of the new moon in Sagittarius that took place back in December, specifically December 12th, 2023. So think back, what was going on for you during that time? What were you maybe planting? What seeds were being planted right around Christmas, by the end of the new year, or by the end of last year, entering into the new year? Was there anything that you set an intention for? Any new beginnings that started for you? That was the new moon. Now, again, 6 months later, this is the full moon culminating. What has occurred in this area of your life? And, maybe what experiences have you obtained since you initially planted those seeds back in December? So, those are some things to consider. But again, ultimately, a very beautiful and positive full moon energy happening this week. All right, so we are still on Thursday, May 23rd. I told you this was a jam-packed, stacked day of cosmic events. On this day, this is the last major cosmic event for this day. We do have one more after this, so stay tuned. It's actually the most significant one of not just the week, but of the year. But before that, right before that, on the 23rd, we also do have Venus entering Gemini. I know I said it before that later into the day, Venus will move out of Taurus and enter into Gemini, where Venus will be hanging out for the next few weeks. Now, during the time that Venus was in Taurus, we were getting really grounded and rooted in the things that we have, the tangible, practical, earthy experiences in our love, in the relationships with the people in our life, also the things in our life, the money in our life, our relationships with things that we deem of value. That's all Venus stuff. Now, Venus in Taurus was honestly one of the best signs, one of the best placements for stimulation of the physical, for sensuality, for really getting your hands in the mud and really feeling into whatever this energy is, whatever this relationship is, whatever this piece of value is, whether this be my money, my finances, my art, my connection with beauty and creation. This is all Venusian energy. Now, with Taurus, Venus in Taurus was at home. So we were really like literally just swimming in this Venusian energy of almost embracing the physical, embracing the things that we can touch, see, taste, and smell. This was amazing energy for really, again, anything physically stimulating. But now that Venus enters Gemini, that stimulation basically moves up to the mind and becomes a lot more mental, right? So it's less about how we can stimulate the physical body and more about how we can stimulate the mental body. And so with Venus and Gemini, it is all about how you make me think. What are the thoughts in this connection that we share? What is the communication here? Right? What kind of conversations do I have with this person? What's the conversation around this area of my life? These are all the things that we'll be beginning to question and consider during the time that Venus is in Gemini. Now, again, Venus is the planet of love, of beauty, of all things aesthetic and valuable. Of course, also money and relationships falls into this category. Now, during this time, it's essential that you start having the important conversations in relationships. This is the time to move out of the physical side of things and really get into the more intellectual side of things, right? Can this person stimulate my mind? Are we able to go deep in conversation? Now, the one thing with Gemini is that sometimes it does have a habit of remaining on the surface. That's where Sagittarius steps in to kind of expand things. But when we're discussing just strictly Gemini energy, we do often find that with Gemini, we can sometimes stay here because we want to get to know everybody and everything. And there's so much to learn. There's so much curiosity. There's so much busyness that it's hard to go deep on one thing because we're so focused on everything, right? It's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. That's a typical quality for Gemini. Now, translating this to our relationships, beware that restlessness in relationships is likely. Having multiple people and experiences in relationships can also happen during this time. Am I saying that people are going to go out there and suddenly cheat on their partners? No, of course not. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is to make sure you're adding a level of variety to your relationships, a level of spark, a level of spice. Not necessarily turning the heat up, right? This is not a fire sign. This is an air sign, so it's much more about adding a level of mental variety. Again, this can look like different date night ideas, such as going to a museum, maybe listening to a podcast and cooking together, right? And one thing about Gemini, it rules the hands. So anything you can do with your partner that involves your hands, but also your mind, really, really great for connection. Maybe this is going to a library and picking up some really good books together. Maybe head into the park and have a picnic together and, eat some finger foods while you read that book. Right? Again, these are just examples of Venus being in Gemini. Also, social dates, maybe double dates. Again, Gemini's the twins, right? So including more doubles into your relationship life can be it's really stimulating, really mentally stimulating, really relationship stimulating. And again, if this is not pertaining to you, if you're not taught or wanting to even go into the romance side of things, platonically, Venus and Gemini is excellent for connecting with the women in your life that are much more mentally adept. Maybe again, learning from a woman. I say women because Venus is a Venusian feminine energy. So again, connecting, having conversations, learning. Gemini is the sign of the teacher. So learn, teach, and absorb new information. You'll be so much happier and so much more satisfied during this time that Venus is in Gemini. And the last thing I want to say about Venus and Gemini is if you are a Gemini rising, I highly recommend that you take this opportunity to really spice up your appearance. You're going to be feeling much more aesthetically pleasing and just honestly way more beautiful in general. So get behind the camera, take some more video of yourself. Go get maybe a style upgrade, a wardrobe upgrade. These are all really great things to do when Venus is in your first house, which all Gemini risings, you will be experiencing this for the foreseeable future. So take advantage and enjoy it. All right. And last but not least, on Saturday, May 25th, Jupiter enters Gemini. This is honestly one of the most significant events of the year of 2024. The reason is Jupiter takes a year to move through an entire sign, which means it's only in a sign once a year, and every 12 years it'll return back to the same sign. So we've actually had Jupiter in Taurus ever since May 16th of last year of 2023. Now this year on May 25th, Jupiter is moving into Gemini. Now in Taurus, we saw advancements in the Taurus areas of life, right? We saw advancements in food and agriculture. I noticed a lot more conversations around plant-based or lab-grown meat, for people who are plant-based. We saw Bitcoin have new heights that it didn't experience in the last few years. Of course, Jupiter was expanding things when it came to the money sector. Now, with Jupiter entering Gemini, we can expect to experience at least a lot of very, very rapid innovations when it comes to the area of communication, social media, anything involving those Gemini qualities of connection. So again, Gemini connection, we can also see things regarding transportation, aviation, anything involving the education system, right? There's a lot of areas of life that each different zodiac sign rules over to some degree that you can make those connections with. With Jupiter entering into an air sign, this is really a hallmark moment where Jupiter is expanding on the air qualities, the communication qualities. So this is really, really, really significant because Jupiter is the biggest planet. Jupiter is that planet that brings luck and expansion, and wherever it shows up, oftentimes really good things occur. Now, Jupiter in Gemini is in a kind of a challenged position since technically Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius. So essentially, this is the sign that's opposite to its home. So it's a little bit uncomfortable here because while Jupiter is typically the planet that wants to expand the mind and wants to learn and philosophize and develop beyond where it's been, Gemini is that sign, as we discussed previously, that's much more focused on the facts of things, on the nitty-gritty details of the thing. And again, this is a Mercury-ruled sign. Jupiter doesn't do so well in Mercury-ruled signs. So what can we expect this year with Jupiter being in Gemini? Well, number one, we can expect to see a lot of changes in our luck and of our development, especially during the Mercury retrograde periods. This is because now, for the whole next 12 months, Mercury will have an effect over Jupiter. So that's a really important thing to note. We can also see some major advancements, some technological advancements in general, because again, Gemini is a sign that does enjoy advancements when it comes to technology. Gemini is very big on social media. Gemini is a communication energy, right? It's all about talking. It's basically the sign that rules over our mouth and our mind, which is what social media represents in a lot of ways. So we can maybe even see some expansion in social media influencing. in opportunities on social media, or even just the effect and the influence that social media has on ourselves and on our society. So these are some other areas. Gemini is the sign that rules over transportation. And so we might see some major rapid innovation when it comes to transportation, aviation. I know I've seen a lot of reports in the news over Boeing and all these different conversations around airlines and aviation. We might see some changes here, some growth and development. We also might see the same thing when it comes to cars, right? Self-driving cars, automated cars, things of that nature. Wouldn't be surprised if we witness a huge kind of advancement and update and maybe some big progress taking place in this area. Interestingly enough, Jupiter will be forming a trine with Pluto throughout this year, which is actually great for essentially changing these parts of society in a much bigger, much more monumentous type of way. Some other things with Jupiter being in Gemini, to pay attention to where this is showing up in your chart, of course, because this is going to expand this area of life. Pay attention to the topics that you want to learn about. We might find more interest in education, in learning, and of growing through the mind. Connections. It's not just about what you have, which was what Jupiter and Taurus was all about, but it's also about what you know and who you know. And so this might be the very big lesson we learn over the next year with Jupiter being in Gemini, is it's equally important to make sure you're building those connections, not burning bridges, learning from other people as well as teaching other people. Perhaps understanding that equal energy exchange, and that sometimes it's not through physical means, it's not through payments, but it's through time, it's through communication, it's through those different experiences that we cannot quite put money and value on, but certainly do come with a lot of value. Now, the one thing with Jupiter being in Gemini, amongst a few others, but the one big thing that we might want to take note of is the fact that this can certainly overinflate things. When I think of Jupiter and Gemini, I think of like a hot air balloon. While this is amazing, it sometimes can lack substance. And so this is something we might notice during our journey through Jupiter and Gemini, is that we don't always have that level of depth and substance that we so crave. Again, this is because Gemini is that busy bee, it's that social butterfly. And this is amazing for building connections and gaining a lot of new insights and new information, maybe learning a whole lot about a lot of different things. But again, if we're looking to go deep, Jupiter and Gemini is not necessarily the one. We might find we have better luck with other areas of our chart, but with going deep, Jupiter and Gemini, not always as interested. So just something to be aware of, but otherwise, these are some really, really positive changes taking place. We might notice overall that the pace in our society gets a little bit quickened, especially with going from Jupiter being in Taurus, a much more slow energy, to Jupiter being in Gemini. We might notice that we feel a little bit more restless, that paces just pick up in general, whether again that be in advancements with technology, with transportation, even with social media. We might just notice a little bit more rapid energy, a little bit more rapid developments taking place. And again, we do have a whole year to really appreciate this energy, as Jupiter will be in Gemini all the way until June of 2025. So without all the other stuff to go into, that is the nitty gritty of Jupiter being in Gemini. Check out where this is in your chart. Look at where you're going to feel the most luck and abundance. If you have Gemini placements, this is really, really great for you. Or even if you just have mutable placements, I'm also talking to my Sagittariuses, my Pisces, and my Virgos. A lot of us have been feeling the heaviness of Saturn being in Pisces, but with Jupiter entering Gemini, it certainly elevates and lightens the energy. And so we might feel like a little bit of a weight's been taken off of us. Now that Jupiter is in Gemini, we feel a little bit more lucky, a little bit more abundant, and who doesn't want a little bit more of that, right? So that's some really good stuff to look forward to with Jupiter being in Gemini. And that really wraps us up. Thank you all so much for staying tuned until the end. I know this was a lot of information. I encourage you to pause, re-listen, go back, take down some notes, maybe even listen to this during the rest of your week at different parts, because Again, we've got a lot this week, a lot of cosmic energy taking place, and it can feel almost like a lot is coming at us at once. So don't get overwhelmed. Know that there's a lot of positive changes taking place, and this is really good stuff to look forward to. If you are interested in, of course, booking a monthly reading, I do offer those so you can understand where all of what I just discussed is showing up in your chart. If you have questions over the houses, over the planets, over the signs, and you haven't really wanted to go as deep quite yet, this might be the chance to do so. Again, 50% off for solar return readings if you're a Gemini, 30% off for birth chart readings if you're a Gemini, and it's only a $50 charge if you are somebody that just wants a basic reading to know where these cosmic events and how these cosmic events are showing up in your life. And with that, thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, show all the love, as I love all of you guys so much. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful week, and I will see you all again next Sunday.